All right, everybody. The Rules Committee will come to order. So today we are considering a manager's amendment to the Build Back Better bill. It makes only very technical changes to comply with Senate procedure. They are a little arcane, but stick with me as I read directly from the summary. It makes, quote, technical changes to narrow U.S. code citations and references to comply with Senate procedural requirements, end quote. Let me give you a few examples of what we're talking about here. The amendment clarifies that the funding for the Department of Labor's wage and hour division is for, quote, activities of the division, end quote, and not activities in general. It conforms the definition of, quote, multifamily building, end quote, with a similar definition elsewhere in the bill. It changes a citation from Section 1463H to Section 1463HB2 of the National Agricultural Research Extension and Teaching Policy Act, all to comply with Senate procedural requirements. So again, these are extremely technical changes. This committee has already spent 2 very long meetings considering this bill. One was 5 hours and the other was roughly 8 hours, and I don't know about you, I enjoyed every minute of it. And that's in addition to the work of all the other committees. I think just about everything has already been said. In addition to completing the procedural vetting on this bill, the Congressional Budget Office has now released financial analysis on it as well. I have a sneaking suspicion, though, that minds are pretty much made up on the bill in terms of how people will vote. So it is my hope that we can complete our work on this 6-page manager's amendment quickly, because we're going to hope to consider on the House floor as soon as we finish here in the Rules Committee. So with that, I'm happy to turn to our distinguished ranking member for any comments or wisdom he wishes to impart on it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't think you'll be surprised we see the bill somewhat differently. But this is now the 4th time this committee is meeting on the majority's monstrosity of a reconciliation bill. I hope this is not becoming the new normal around here, meeting before you're ready and rewriting bills multiple times at the Rules Committee. 2 weeks ago, I noted that this bill should be called the bad, bad, bad bill, and I stand by that characterization. It's a wish list of radical policy provisions and reckless spending that would lead to massive tax increases, trillions added to the national debt, and more government control of our lives. What's worse, it's been cobbled together in the back rooms of the Speaker's office rather than going through the regular legislative process. To make matters even worse, we've just received a bill score from the Congressional Budget Office, but no one's yet had time to fully review it. We may have that score in hand, but I don't think any member has had time to consider it yet. Why aren't we giving ourselves the chance to review the critical information as the Senate will do? I suspect the reason you're moving so quickly is what we all know to be true, but that none of my friends in the majority will admit. The CBO score did not turn out well for this legislation. Contrary to President Biden's repeated claim that this bill will cost $0, it will actually cost trillions. Not only does the CBO score show that almost $400 billion is unpaid for over the next 10 years, but the judiciary title alone adds another $400 billion over the following 10. And on top of that, if you make every program here permanent, which I know my friends want to do, then the actual cost will be a minimum of $4 trillion with about $1.5 trillion in revenue. It would be an outrageously unbalanced bill, one that would actually cost taxpayers well over $2 trillion over the next 10 years. And that's after the gigantic tax increases on the middle class, coupled with windfalls for the wealthiest that this bill contemplates. In fact, the second biggest program in this bill gives billions to the rich. Mr. Chairman, this entire process has been ludicrous and frankly a sham. 4 different meetings on this bill, multiple managers' amendment, each drafted in the back rooms of leadership offices, pushing ahead without taking time to digest the CBO score, all to rush ahead to push through a bloated, unbalanced spending package that you know the Senate will change. The House can do better than this, Mr. Chairman. I think we should do better than this. But with that, I yield back.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I know that the speaker said that this amendment is a privileged scrub, but it's a very technical amendment, and I don't think it does anything to address the fact that on the budget resolution, we've got 3 committees that are well over what the budget resolution was. So, for example, the Committee on Homeland Security was at $500 million. The CBO came in at roughly $1.5 billion, 3 times more. You have the Committee on Judiciary. It's over as well. Worse, it's over. Just if you just look at 2032 and 2041 projections, it's over about $370 billion. Additionally, the Committee on Oversight and Reform came in almost double, $7.5 billion to $13.8 billion. It seems like there's issues on reconciliation. I just wanted to flag it.
Thank you for flagging your concerns. We appreciate it.
Well, I mean, there's got to be some concerns that this will bust privilege. And like, I'm not a Senate parliamentarian, but this has got, this is my first year on the committee. Some other folks have got to have noticed this would bust privilege.
Well, one is I don't think that is a concern. I think that committees have been working with CBO all along as they've developed their pieces of legislation. So we already have a good idea of how much these provisions will cost, and we'll be sure to have offsets before it is finalized. I do believe that this bill will be fully paid for. I believe, I'm sure my colleagues are aware that there's a long-standing difference of opinion between CBO and a lot of other experts, including the Treasury Department, on the savings from cracking down on the millionaire tax cheats. I don't want to get into the weeds on the scoring methodology here, but members can read the estimates and read the information from Treasury and other experts out there and decide for themselves. But I feel completely comfortable saying that this bill is paid for, and I believe that again, we have been working with the Senate to make sure that this bill will comply with their rules. So I feel good, but I appreciate your concern that somehow that this bill might get derailed, because we don't want it to be. So we want to send it over and get it passed and help the American people. But thank you.
No, I totally get that. I just want to, again, draw attention. This is supposed to be a privileged scrub, quote unquote, but it's a technical change of the manager's amendment that does nothing, like I said, with those 3 issues. But thanks. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Ms. Fishbach.
And Mr. Chair, I appreciate that you said you had a summary of the amendment, and maybe we could get that, because there are some questions. I mean,
We sent it out, I think.
Did I get, maybe I
You
didn't.
have it electronically.
Okay, all right, I will, because I was trying to go through it and engross it quickly, and so there are it seems to me there's a little more in here than just clarifying references to code. And there's on the last page, it removes language that appropriates money to Social Security Administration. That's on the last page, page 6 of the, when you strike the lines on page 1091, strike lines 16 through 21, that removes an appropriation for Social Security.
Yeah, so, I mean, what we did, we struck a provision related to Social Security Administration funding that was not specifically related to paid leave, so we narrowed it. So, and we did that to comply with the Senate rules, to get to Mr. Reschenthal's concern that somehow we were, not paying attention to that. We are. And so I think that is a technical change, but, yeah.
And potentially, Mr. Chair, it is. I just want to understand, just so that I understand, because like I said, as I was going through, and there's some changes where we actually take a reference to a code out and put in other language. For example, on page 2, there's a definition of employee and employer, and originally, in the original bill, it was tied to the definitions were tied to the Fair Labor Standards Act and used those definitions. And then in this amendment, they are creating different definitions of employee and employer.
Yeah, I mean, and we did that because the Fair Labor Standards Act was too broad and would have cost us Senate privilege. So that was
Okay.
narrowed down as well.
Okay, and I appreciate that.
No, and
That's why I'm asking.
yeah, no, I mean, what has been my interpretation of all of this is that all these changes have been made to simply comply with Senate privilege, but not necessarily to change the underlying bill that we have been dealing with now for quite some time.
Okay, okay. And then maybe just one more?
You can, you know.
There's references to the health professional shortage area, and it was originally tied to the Public Health Service Act, and then we've removed that reference, those references, and added just simply an underserved area. And I'm a little concerned that that might not be as broad for the rural areas, and it may create a different outcome of those health scholarships and grant, and loan repayments.
Yeah, right, yeah,
Is there a definition of underserved areas somewhere else that maybe I missed?
we will follow up with you before there's a vote.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to understand.
Yeah, but I think it is fair to say that any changes made to narrow anything here has been made to comply with Senate privileges. Yeah, and so, I mean, so that's basically that is the explanation essentially of what these technical changes are all about.
Okay, and I appreciate the response, and I yield back. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. If not, the chair will be in a receipt of I will entertain a motion for the distinguished gentleman from New York, our Budget Committee designee, Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee provide for further consideration of H.R. 5376, the Build Back Better Act. The rule provides that the further amendment printed in the Rules Committee report shall be considered as adopted.
You've heard the motion for the gentleman from New York. Is there any amendment or discussion? Mr. Cole? No? Okay. Hearing none, the vote now is on the motion from the gentleman from New York. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. A recorded vote has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Torres.
Aye.
Mrs. Torres, aye. Mr. Perlmutter.
Aye.
Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin, aye. Ms. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Morelli.
Aye.
Mr. Morelli, aye. Mr. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
Mr. DeSaulnier, aye. Ms. Ross. Aye. Ms. Ross, aye. Mr. Neguse. Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Mr. Cole. No. Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Burgess. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk, report the total.
9 yeas, 3 nays.
The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Accordingly, I will carry it for the majority. And Mr. Reschenthaler will do it for the Republicans. Yeah, and so, and I think we're hoping to go like soon, as soon as we can get to the floor. So, I want to thank everybody, and if I don't see everybody, have a happy Thanksgiving. All right, all the best, thank you. Without objection, the committee is adjourned.